had alluded to this earlier in terms of
this was before they needed to be there, right?
Right. And I alluded to it earlier because remember a lot of the teams, more importantly, the players in the NFLPA, they had put out their statements, right, where they were saying, hey, man, we're not going to show up for off-season work. Excuse me, we're not showing up for off-season workouts. They wanted a lot of the stuff cut back or completely thrown out. Obviously, J.C. Tretter, the center for the Cleveland Browns, who is obviously the NFLPA president, he had stated numerous times that he didn't think off-season workouts were necessary based on the production and based on the overall product of the game last year. He thought that, man, it was still a high, quality of ball being played and it wasn't necessary. So obviously to see that they had showed up when they did from a non-mandatory standpoint as well, it was a little bit of alarm. So
in a good way.
It was from a fan standpoint, but from the player standpoint, I was like, dang, dude, like y'all just rolled over, because obviously we talked about how they didn't vote fully. And then ultimately the 17th game happened and then they were mad about that. And then we talked about how the playoffs expanded. So I was like, man, this is crazy. Like that y'all just kind of gave in again. But shout out to connections, shout out to sources, shout out to,
just breaking news.
Well, you can call it whatever you want to call it. But either way, I did find out some new information about what transpired in terms of why the players did come back. So they were able to get a gentleman's agreement in place where essentially 11 on 11, like full team on team practice. Usually you have that during OTAs. Usually you'll see the full defense or the full offense going at it. That has been removed for right now. They also have limited the amount of time they're able to be on the practice field, along with for the morning meetings part, they can do those virtually as well. So they're taking the amount of time they're in the building and reducing it, along with reducing the practice time. And you can say this is probably the most dangerous part of OTAs when you go 11 on 11, because you got big guys that we're not really trying to hit because we don't have pads on, but obviously you're big guys. So, that part, and then just people fall in because 90-man roster typically during that time, not everybody is NFL caliber. Guys that fall on the ground are typically guys that get other people hurt. And that happens a lot during OTAs as well. So seeing that they didn't remove it completely, but they've limited the amount of times that they can do it. I believe that's how I read it. That is significant. So shout out to the players for at least that part in terms of not just letting the NFL just continue to take, and ultimately them not do anything or get anything reciprocated to them, because that's not a good relationship. And as a whole, the NFL, the players and organizations, right? They have to work together for the brand to be what it is, for it to continue to grow, and for us to be able to have shows like this and have fans like y'all that are tuning in. That product has to stay there. The health of these players have to stay there. But more importantly, just continuing to keep it as awesome and as progressive as it can be as well, and healthy, safe. Player health and safety. So those are all things that transpire, which is why they're able to come back. So definitely good to see that, man.
I don't think he brings up a bad point about the product last year either.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I noticed too much of a difference, really, outside of just the fans not being there. I thought it was still fine. Outside of the weird scheduling mishaps, watching football, I wasn't really disappointed. I thought they were pretty solid games. Yeah,
they were good games. I don't think you were fond of like some of the miscommunications though that equated to big touchdowns.
Yeah, at the beginning of the year.
Because that's what OTAs, that's what that brings.
And also, I think your point about Cam and Ben being there and some of these dudes, just the rapport, just starting this all-in mentality of like, yo, we don't necessarily have to be here. Let's go. Like, we got some unfinished business to do. That's kind of the feel that I'm getting from this team right now. I don't know what the slogan is. I think it might just be unfinished business 2021. That might be it.
Put it out there?
I think that might be it.
I ain't going to do that. I'm going to do it. Unfinished. And I'm with it now. I will say this. I do love the fact that Ben is there and that Cam is there anytime, because I've been a part of places where the veterans, they don't show up for OTAs. They only show up for when it's mandatory. And it's fine. It's not against the rules, but I will say from a cohesiveness standpoint, it does mess things up a little bit, because you have to get used to how this guy plays, how he communicates and things like that. But as a whole, man, when you have guys like Ben and Cam there, it makes you look around and say, well, if they're there, what would be anyone's excuse to not be there? Because those guys are the leaders. Those guys mean business. So you want that. So for me, I'm like, man, seeing them there, I feel like everyone should be there. Now, granted, it's not mandatory, but that's kind of how I look at it right there, you know?
You mentioned way earlier in the podcast about the OTAs and the topics about people who aren't there. I haven't even checked in on that. Who isn't there?
I'm not name dropping them.
Okay.
You can find them. It ain't hard, but I don't name drop because to me it's not mandatory. So I never make a big deal, but people make a big deal of it a lot. But the thing that I'm really just hitting on is this. It's not mandatory. But if Ben Roethlisberger, future first round Hall of Famer, is there, what is your excuse to not be outside of, illness or birth of a child or what, you know what I mean? Or death? Like, how can you not be there? Like,
what's his normal schedule with these? Is he normally not there?
Put it like this.
Because I can't remember. This is my first time. All
right. So I'll say this. He makes it a priority to be there enough.
Okay.
He's there for when he's supposed to be there, and he's obviously there for when it's mandatory. And that's that. But for 7, that's most, like I said, when you talk about those caliber players, they don't, especially this late in their careers, they don't show up for this because you're trying to preserve your body. You're trying to rest. This is usually where you're recovering. So typically they don't show up to this type of stuff. But for him to be there, it's just like, dude, that's dope. I like that.
Is he more involved this year? I mean, it seems like...
I don't know. I want to see if it was more so just because that was the beginning. It was the first time since the pandemic. Is it going to look like that going forward next week and the week after? Because it's for 3 weeks total. And then they'll have their mini camp afterwards for the veterans as well. So we'll see as it progresses. Now, we know he'll be there for the mini camp, barring something catastrophic. But the next 2 weeks, right? Because this is their last practice today, Thursday. They're definitely done by now. But this is their last one. Then from there, they'll show up again next week and the following week. So we'll see if he continues to show up. But the fact that he's there right now, like, that's big, man.
Yeah, I think the bigger takeaway is who is there. And for me, it is Ben and Harris.
Yeah.
Like, dude, just seeing them playing.
Bro, I love it, man. The throw that he hit.
Throwing the ball.
What was it? The 40-yarder on the left? Man, I loved it.
Bro, I'm like, there's got to be some rapport that's being built here. And I'm liking this.
No, but that's the thing. So Coach Tomlin, he would always talk about that is what gets built during OTAs. It's not always about becoming bigger, stronger, faster. During OTAs, he always talks about, Coach Tomlin, I'm saying here, he always talks about how he puts a premium on the bonding, a premium on the relationship element. He makes it where it's forced time, even through the scheduling of free time, to where you're going to have to just chill around each other for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, because he wants you to feel close to the guys. You get 10 practices, right? He'll cancel a practice to take the guys to Dave and Buster's, take the guys bowling, take the guys to a social event that has zero to do with football, solely so we can just talk and get close to each other. Because his premise is, if you're close to a person, if you genuinely care about a person, you're going to go the extra mile for them. You're willing to work harder for them. You're going to prepare harder. You're going to sacrifice more because you actually like the guy. And that theory is very true, because I think of how me and the guys are here in Pittsburgh when we were playing, and even as we retired. Well, I'm retired. Some of these guys still playing, but how we still remain close. Whereas you think of other places where it's like, I probably only talked to one guy, throughout my 4 or however many years I was at a place. Like, that's the only guy I talk to now. You know what I mean? But that's the difference, because in Pittsburgh, he's going to make it where you're going to get close. Your families are going to get close. You're going to genuinely care about these people on personal levels, and it's going to pay big time dividends. So the fact that 7 is there with Najee, that is getting built. That rapport is getting built up in a major way. So I'm happy to see that, man.
Yeah, definitely. That got me amped. The most. Just seeing Ben and Najee Harris together in these videos. I'm like, bro.
Fire.
Bro, I'm liking what I'm seeing here. Especially you hear Harris with his interviews and how amped up he seems to be about this season. Yeah. And then Ben to be back early for these OTAs. Because it seems like everything that has come out of Ben's camp, he's been amped up about coming back and trying to, what I said, unfinished business. Try to take care of this business in 2021. So to see this come together already this early, because that's all you're going to see. You're going to see a couple highlights. There's not too much to take away.
They don't show a ton. And even for us media people, we haven't, it's like different waves of the people that are allowed to be down there to see certain parts. Now, obviously, you still can't see the whole practice. It's either the first 5-10 minutes, when they're doing warm-ups, and then the ending part where we're finalizing. Well, typically we'll be finalizing team period, but now that that's not a thing, they just finalized the little end part where you saw some of the throws that Ben was making at the end, winding his arm down and stuff like that. So like I said, man, it just feels good, man. It feels good though.